And you just realize that every founder in the beginning is in the same situation as you, and people always think like, oh, founders, they know what they're doing. And the truth is we don't really know what we're doing. And I think I wish sometimes that people would like take off that mask and just be like, okay, this isn't going well. I'm working on this. And I feel like a lot of times people think they need to like put on like a mask or like a facade and, oh, I'm so successful and this, and I always just try to be really honest because I feel like, we're all in the same boat and we probably all have the same, issues and problems. So, why not just talk about that? And I think that that's totally normal. And any founder that will tell you, oh, it's just smooth sailing, everything's been really great. They're probably hiding something.
Welcome to Founder Real Talk, honest conversations about what it really takes to be a founder. Then very warm welcome to Founder Real Talk. Today we have Julia here with me. And so Julia is a co-founder of Chio, and that's a very cool sweatshirt brand. I actually went on the website and researched. Cool. Very cool. To bring joy to the family, I saw. So, yeah. And you actually have one on, I see, right?
Yeah, I have because Oktoberfest is coming up, I have a pretzel sweatshirt on.
Wow, that's amazing. I want one of those. Yeah. So, and I saw you grew up in New York. So that's like the birthplace of fashion anyway. So you were in touch with that at a quite early age. And you're also a designer, specialized in bags and accessories. That's really cool. And now based in Munich, if I correctly, and you're bringing your vision and experiencing to your own brand. Well, first of all, I would like to know, like, if you introduce yourself to a random person, like, how do you normally do that?
You mean when it's about my business, or, well, first of all, thank you so much for having me here, Jana. I'm delighted to be here, and thank you also for the awesome introduction. How do I introduce myself? It depends. I think if I'm in a room of founders, I'm like, hi, my name is Julia, I'm the founder of Me. When it's more like in a personal setting, I'm still a little bit quiet and shy about it. Okay. Which is maybe not so good, but
what makes you be shy?
I think one of the questions you had sent me beforehand was, hold on, let me see what it was. It was, how has this journey changed the way you see yourself? And I think at the very beginning of my founder journey, I would go up to people, and if it would be like about my brand, I'd be like, oh, I have a fashion brand, a sweatshirt brand. And then I would like go like this and like duck under the table because I didn't feel like I had grown into that role yet. And sometimes I didn't know what to say. When you just started a brand or a company, it doesn't feel real yet. And it really takes like months and years of work to get to the point where you can, I don't want to say be really proud, but where you really feel like you're actually a founder. And before that, you just, I don't know, I guess you just don't believe it yet.
Yeah. How was it then when you basically like legally signed the company? Was there like a bit of a feeling that now it's official and like I'm legally responsibility, or?
No, I think for me, it was more when like the first time I was at an in-person sale and somebody bought my sweatshirt. And I saw my the other day I was in the subway and I walked up and I saw this guy and he was wearing our sweatshirt. Wow. And that was like, and I think for me, it's always been like that because when I, working as a designer for so many years, even when I got my first design job, it wasn't until I was standing on the street. And when I started designing, I remember it was actually, I was living in Berlin, but I was in Munich because I was visiting my family. And I was standing across from the Viktualienmarkt, and there was a woman next to me and she was wearing a scarf that I designed. Wow. And that was the moment I was like, I'm actually a designer because somebody went out and bought something that I made and paid money to wear something that I created.
Yeah. I guess it's also quite maybe specific in the fashion industry because there's, I don't know, like for me from the outside perspective, it feels like there's a lot of pressure and like prestige and like branding is everything. And then when you just start, like you have to kind of like find your way and like establish everything, especially when it's from zero to.
Yeah, for sure. And it's such a, people just think, okay, you just like draw this sweatshirt and it's there. But I mean, it takes months, it takes years. You have to find a supplier, you have to get the fabric right, you have to get the design right, you have to get the fit right with apparel. So it's really it's such a long, in the end, it's just a sweatshirt, but the process that it took you to get there, it really takes quite some time.
Yeah. So how was that for you? Was it like you were, so I see it like in two ways, like either founders, they start the business because they don't want to do something anymore, like what they've been doing, or they always had this dream and at some point they're like, okay, now I take this step, or maybe COVID came along. I think, like, how was it in your case? Like, was it more like a pain driven thing that you're done with whatever you've been past, or more like?
Well, when I worked as a designer for Libeskind Berlin doing handbags for 10 years, and I worked alongside the founders, and that was a very cool experience for me. I liked their motivation. I liked everything that I was able to learn from them. And I remember my boss, who was one of the founders, he always said to me, you know, Julia, you have to fail. It's really important that you fail. And after they left the company, I still worked there for a few years. But for me, it wasn't the same. I didn't feel like I was growing as much. I didn't feel like I was being pushed as much. I was learning a lot more about design details, but I wasn't learning that much about the big picture of running a company anymore, which is what I had, you know, really enjoyed the first few years that I was working there. And then, okay, trying to not get off track, but then I think it was like 6 years ago, and I was sitting with a good friend of mine who's a serial entrepreneur. And he said to me, you know, Julie, he was always pushing me. He's like, why are you the CEO of your own company? Like, and I always like looked at him and I was like, well, I don't know. And he's like, if I can do it, anyone can. So he asked me, if you had your own brand, what would you do? And I said, you know, I love sweatshirts. I've always loved sweatshirts. I would have my own sweatshirt brand. And then he said, well, what's standing in your way? And I was kind of dumbfounded. And I was like, well, you know, I guess nothing. He's like, yeah, just do it. And I was just like, what? I can't give up my job, you know? And yeah. And then a year later, when COVID hit, for 1 month, I was working in Kurzarbeit. Yeah. And a friend of mine who's a flight attendant, she moved in with me for a few weeks. And she said to me, you know how to sew. We need to make masks. And I said to her, I don't know what you're talking about. Nobody's going to wear a mask. And she was like, no, I was just in Asia. Everyone is going to be wearing a mask. Yeah. So within like a few days, I remember we ordered like 400 meters of elastic I think we ordered it through like eBay. Yeah. And I still had a lot of fabric at home. We made a mask like template and we started sewing masks. And she was going to the post office and sending them the masks, and she was selling through like her Instagram and Facebook. And I think in a month we made about 500 masks, and we were just like selling it to family and friends and relatives. So that was, I think, my first like real taste of, I could maybe have my own company now. But of course, I mean, we were very lucky because at that point in time, no production site was able to deliver masks yet. So it was just those few weeks, but we really like used those few weeks to have our little mask business on the side.
I love it.
That I came up with, and I was like, I really want to do my own thing. And then like 1 or 2 more things happened. And so finally, it was about 3.5 years ago, I was working for a company and I was doing production in Italy for them. And I went into a factory and they had these really cool patches. And I bought some of them. And then I bought just like blank sweatshirts. And I sewed the patches on the sweatshirts. And all my friends that had kids, I gave it to them for Christmas. And everyone was like, wow, these are so cool. Our kids love the patches and they're so much fun. Oh, do you have this for the adults? And basically that's where the idea was born. I think in my head, I was like, I want to have an idea. I want to have a vision. It kind of just came to me naturally. So to answer your question, I started it because it just kind of organically came to me.
Yeah. And would you say you have seen certain elements of this entrepreneurial DNA in your childhood, that you always wanted to create something, or like you always wanted to make other people happy, or like, do you see like a connection here?
You're going to laugh, but I don't know if this was a big thing in Germany, but in the US, when I was growing up, on the front of our driveways, we used to have like lemonade sales, and we would have like a table and we would make lemonade ourselves and we would sell it for like, I don't know, 25 cents a cup or something. So I remember doing that, and I would do like little garage sales and sell like my toys that I didn't need anymore. So I think I always had that in me.
Yeah. To kind of like provide something for others, make them happy, like a little flea market.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
for sure. I think that was always a little bit in my DNA. And I knew at a really young age, my dad's a banker. So he's a little bit more on the conservative side. And I think when I told him, oh, I want to go into fashion, he thought I was completely nuts. But I think when I was 13, I told him, well, either I want to be a designer or I want to be a therapist. And we had a family friend at the time who was a therapist. And I said I wanted to go into child psychology. And he said to me, you know, Julia, we live in the US. Like, you need to be really careful. You can get sued for a lot of things. And then I was just like, okay, I'm just going to be a designer. And then I think that was just like part of my identity since I was 13 or 14 years old.
Yeah. And today, would you say like you're still most of the time the designer, or like now by starting your own business, like you also have to have all these other hats on? I mean, you have a business partner, but probably still there's so much more to do.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's so many areas that you get involved in. So I would probably say that the actual design is probably like 5 to 10% of what I do.
So how do you get the creativity? How do you get that? Because I can only imagine that when you do like business tasks, it's more like logic and like, you know, it's like strategy. And how do you do something to kind of give you that space to be more creative?
Yeah. A lot of times I don't do anything. Like when I need a creative idea, I'll just like sit by myself for like 15 minutes and I just like shut down and I'm in my own little world. Or a lot of times I go for a walk, or I'll just sketch, or I'll go on Pinterest, and then the ideas just kind of naturally come to you. And when I'm in a position where I'm like, oh, I don't have any ideas, I just close my laptop and I just go outside and I go for a walk. And usually like 5 minutes later, I'll get an idea.
Okay.
Yeah.
And asking back to like when you basically decide, okay, you want to start, I mean, it kind of came to you, but when you started that, okay, you're going to build your own business, was there still like some financial anxiety, or like did you jump all in, or like what would you advise your younger version today? Like, was that the best way how you did it, or are there some learnings like in that transition, because it's quite a big step?
Yeah. Well,
I guess
the friend I was telling you about, who's a serial entrepreneur, right before I founded my business, I had like a few like phone calls and like in-person meetings with him. And he gave me some really valuable advice. He said, Chio, I have the business with a really good girlfriend of mine. So he said to me, before you found a business, he was like, what do you need every month to live? He's like, find 2 clients that can give you that income every month. So you have that and you have your base. And everything else you do beyond that, that's extra. But make sure you have that base. And that was, I mean, it's such simple advice and it's such obvious advice. But him saying that to me was so helpful. And that's how I did it. I work as a freelance designer. And so, you know, I have my clients that just like cover my bases, and then everything else on top that I do is Chio me. But I think that gave me less anxiety because I didn't have this pressure. Like, okay, I have to sell 200 sweatshirts a week right off the bat. You know, I can just let my brand grow organically. And I think especially when you're trying to build a brand, if you want to build it organically, you don't want to have that pressure. Like I have to sell, because then
But I see it a lot actually. Like, and that's why it's interesting to be like a hybrid in terms of like, you know, starting it but having your safe base versus jumping all in, but then you're basically in survival mode, which, well, you can maybe move faster, but also you might take the wrong decisions because you're literally in survival mode.
And you have to, and then you have to do this, and you have to do this. And I never wanted to be in the position where, I mean, I think the reason I also wanted to be a founder is I didn't want anyone telling me what to do. Like you have to, and when I was working at my last design job, I got to a point where I felt like I wasn't designing a handbag to make a really cool handbag. I had to design this many handbags a week because, you know, we had to make this much money every month. And I think I just never wanted to be in that kind of position.
True. That's quite a lot of founders burn out because they have all this pressure.
Sorry.
What would you say about then like bootstrapping versus taking money on? Like, did you also think about that, or was it like not even like on your radar because you wanted to be more like independent? And okay. And did you cut on your lifestyle like as soon as you started? Like, did you make some compromises there, or like, I mean, living in Munich is it's quite a high, an expensive one. Not really.
I think because I had that hybrid model, I didn't feel, but I had like last year, I had a period where it was really hard to get freelance jobs and I struggled a little bit and I had to cut back on like certain things. And honestly, that was pretty difficult for me. You know, maybe you go on one vacation less and you get your hair done a little bit less. Yeah, that wasn't so easy.
No dinners out.
Yeah, that's that one too. No, I think I had like one dinner out a month and the rest I just like cooked a lot. So
yeah. No, but like I mean, yeah, the lifestyle, yeah, it's probably like all the money goes into the business at some point.
Yeah.
And you mentioned you have a co-founder who's actually a friend, right? How would you say that? Like I've heard like different opinions on like, oh, never start a business with your friend, or actually it's great because you know that person already a bit, so you're not like into like cold water. Was it like you were sitting down and like creating like a founder contract to kind of like you know have the business side clear and the friendship like on that side, or like how did that work out on your side so far? And would you recommend it?
I would recommend starting a business with a friend. I mean, we're very different. Like she has a completely different background than I do. So I feel like it's better to work with somebody who has their strengths where your weaknesses are. So I would definitely recommend that. I think that if you both think the same, that's maybe can be like a little bit difficult. But we did sit down before we founded the company. And again, my friend who I was talking about, the entrepreneur, he sat down with both of us and he wrote down like a list of questions. And he was like, when people start a company together, they don't think it can end badly. And he was like, and most of the times it does end badly. So we had to like talk about things like, how do we fight? What do we do? Like, what is our, we're both like me and my co-founder, I think we don't like conflict that much. So it's, you know, and I sometimes need like 1 or 2 hours to like think about things and then I'm ready to talk about things. So we had to, it was really like going to like a therapist's office and saying, okay, this is how I am when this situation arises. This is how I am when this situation arises. Like, what do we do when one person isn't pulling their weight? Like, how do we talk about it? And then we also, you know, on more the business side, we wrote down like what everybody or what each one of us would be doing. I mean, that's kind of like blended. You know, as we've been working together, because everyone just like does a little bit of both. But
you set some roles.
But I would recommend it because I think when you already, I mean, we met in 2010. So by the time we founded, we'd already known each other for 12 years. You know a person, you know their personality, you know how they're going to react to certain things. And I think there's so much pressure and stress around founding. So that's one thing that I don't have to worry about because, you know, I know she's not just going to have like a screaming fit and yell if something isn't working out because I know how she's working, you know,
or coping in stressful situations.
Yeah.
The big surprise. But would you say like what you discussed in the very first, you know, when you were sitting down, that this also happened then in real life, or was there like even some dynamics you couldn't anticipate, but you should have talked about before, or not really?
Not so much. I mean, those conversations that I've had with her throughout the like process of building our business, they've been at times like very uncomfortable. And you know, sometimes one person is having an off week, the other times someone else is having an off week. And I think, you know, when both of us are equally putting our energy and our time and our focus into the company, everything is in balance. But then, you know, something happens and I think it's really important just to talk about it. And I've also learned to communicate better and to be like, okay, listen, this week I'm really stressed with freelance projects. Like I can't take on as much this week. I'll be back next week. And I'm really grateful that you're here and that you're taking care of this. And it's just, I think at the end, everyone just wants to be seen. And I think if you're grateful to the other person and saying, thank you, and this looks great. And it makes for such a better environment than if you're always like nitpicking, what else.
Yeah. And communicate like your expectations, which the other person often doesn't even know about.
For sure. And
Yeah.
just to say like, listen, I'm only at like 20% this week. Like I can't give more. So the other person, is not left in the dark being like, what's wrong with her? Like, why isn't she like holding up her end of the bargain? So I've become better at like communicating those things.
Yeah. Would you say there's something like some learnings you've seen like you developed over time? I mean, like in terms of like communicating, but also, I don't know, maybe you've seen what other founders don't do, or like what you learned about that makes a great team that you basically can move fast and strong together. Like the biggest obstacle, basically, you kind of like ego death. I don't know how you want to call it, basically, because often like what you're fighting is the ego, right?
Yeah.
Like some lack of communication. But
I just realized like gratefulness is so important. Just the way that you speak and communicate to the other person. And if you frame things in a positive, open, honest way, you can just get, even if in that moment you feel like totally frustrated, if there's a way that you can, communicate to the other person. Look, I'm trying to think if I can give you an example, but like a lot of times when I'm like frustrated because something isn't going right and I really need my co-founders help, instead of being like, can you do this, I'll be like I really need your help, like I really need you like right now, and can you please help me like figure this out? And that goes a much more longer way than to be like, can you do this, and can you get this done too? Oh,
it's way more authentic, like stating what you need and like communicating it.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't even know why people don't do that, because often it's like, you have to do this.
Yeah. Or just programmed. I mean, it's just like you have to reprogram yourself to be like that. And, many people maybe aren't in those situations. I mean, being in having a company with someone else, it's like being in a relationship and having a baby. That's how we like feel sometimes. Some days I talk to her more often than I talk to my boyfriend. So it's
a relationship with attachment, so you can't get forced.
Yeah.
And what would you say about like the vision and the goals and the values? Do you think it's just like like what they always talk about, but like when it comes to real business, it doesn't really matter? Or would you say in your case, this is really what is important to have in place, so you have your North Star and like you align? Or what's your point on that?
You mean with my co-founder or
like the company vision and the goal? Like they always say, well, first you have to know your vision, and then you have to have the same values. If that's not in place, also don't hire anyone who doesn't fit into it. Would you say, because often they make a big fuss about it, but do you think it's important to have as like a DNA for your startup? Or is it rather like, for example, like sitting down with your co-founder in the very beginning and you realize, okay, you are a great match, and like you're building from that?
Okay.
Or like what's your opinion on that?
For us, I kind of came up with a creative idea through like a coincidence. And my co-founder has a strong background in sales and in marketing. So those are my weaknesses. And I think that, she was like, that's a really cool idea. And then we just put our heads together, how can we create a story out of this? For me, it was really important. Thought about like, I mean, fashion is an industry that's very surface level. And I always wanted to create something that wasn't just surface level. So it had to be emotional. And with kids, that's emotional. And I also wanted to have a purpose. So we support Grund für Gutes. They work with the Omomas Care Center in Namibia. And a part of the sale of every sweatshirt goes to the children that are in the school there. So that was, for me, something that had to be like that. I didn't want to produce in Asia. We produce in Portugal. I wanted to have like organic cotton. I wanted it to be a sustainable brand. So those were values that were really important for me. And without those values, I don't think that I would have founded a brand. And I'm lucky that my co-founder was on the same page as I was.
Yeah. Because often, I don't know, like all of a sudden, I guess that's more the case when you have like VC money, where all of a sudden it's all about the profit.
Yeah.
And the impact kind of comes secondary, because in the end it's about like surviving, and then it might be like a crash because that other person wants to, I don't know, like just sell, fast.
Yeah. No, I think and I mean, we're a relatively like expensive brand. So for us, it was never, okay, quick. I just need to, to make a profit. We really wanted to like, to build a brand slowly.
Yeah.
That was always our goal.
Okay. That would be actually also leading to a question I had about the hustling and grinding culture versus the creating something, which is like a different energy if you see it in that way. Would you say that it's needed to hustle and grind in the beginning, or like how do you build the business? Like what kind of approach to use there? I mean, you mentioned that you're growing organically, but it's like, how do you approach it that you can preserve your creativity and the impact, and I don't know, maybe say no to some deals that do not align, or how do you approach that?
It depends on what time of the day it is, because I have days where I have to where I'm just like, oh, everything is great. Everything is just happening organically. But then, you still have days when you wake up and you're just like, I don't want to do another Instagram post, or I mean, I have those days too. I don't wake up every day and I'm like, I can't wait to do this and I think the motivation sometimes just comes from, being disciplined. I mean, I woke up this morning at 6:00 and I went to a Pilates class at 6:30. I didn't want to go. I actually thought about turning around and just going back to sleep. But I knew the second I would be done with my class, I would feel good. And I think that's my mentality. I have even on days where I'm just I can't do anything, or I'm too stressed out, I always tell myself, do one thing, write one email, make one post, do one design, do one thing. Usually I end up doing a lot more, but I think you can apply that to, isn't there that 2-minute rule? Just do something for 2 minutes. Usually you'll do it for a lot more, but that rule has really helped me on the days that I don't feel motivated.
Yeah. Well, if you take that step, it feels so stupid not to continue, or you already forgot about that, you actually didn't want to do it.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So how does it a day in the life of Julia looks like? Do you have everything planned and weekly goals, or is it more I don't know,
chaotic?
Or
I'm more chaotic. My co-founder is very strategic, and she's logical, and she works with Excel spreadsheets.
Okay.
Yeah, I wish I was more like that, but I'm more of a jump the gun kind of person. Okay, let's do this now. So, I always keep a list of everything I need to do, but yeah, I would say every day is is really different. I mean, I can give you my day today. I was preparing, we have an event tomorrow at the Starnberger See. So I was just preparing our inventory and printing out flyers. I did a little bit for Instagram today. What else did I do? A little bit on on Shopify. But honestly, every day is so different.
Different, yeah.
Every day is so different.
Okay. But do you have goals for the week and you try to achieve them, or is it more intuitive leading? I don't know if you
intuitive. I'm intuitive. It's really hard for me to work. My co-founder, she's very good at doing that, and that really helps me because she's like that. It helps to structure me. And I keep a list of everything I have to do, and I'll cross it off. But yeah, I'm not that good in the structural and planning and everything.
I mean, if you would be, it would be interesting that you are in design, because otherwise where's the creative side? I mean, there's so many strategies, but often I find it super interesting to see how do founders get going, because you can do it this way, you can do it in that way, and what are you have, I don't know, for myself, I've got a time budget, and then I kind of super logic driven. And then sometimes the intuition also
I definitely work a lot more from my intuition. I just do stuff. I'm just okay, just do this, just do this, just do this, and take a 5-minute break, and then I have this idea. So I'm probably yeah, not that, more right-brained, not that left-brained.
Yeah. And did you have like a situation already where you said to yourself, well, I'm done with this, like I'm throwing the towel, like this is not working, I'm gonna go back, or like I'm gonna work more like as a freelance and I'm just gonna pause?
Yeah, I definitely had those moments, but the funny thing is usually after right after those moments, like something totally crazy happens. But I remember about a year and a half ago, or almost 2 years now, right before Christmas, when we had just started.
Yeah.
And we really thought that like, we would get a lot of sales through our online shops. And at that point, we weren't in retail stores yet. And a few days before Christmas, I just realized, oh, our sales really weren't that good. And I was sitting in a cafe and I was just thinking, okay, like this does not make any more, like, I don't want to do this anymore. And we had worked with a marketing agency that had done ads for us and it hadn't worked the way that we wanted it to. So I was just like, okay, I'm done. And then I think 5 minutes later, I got a call from the boutique of a hotel and they do a lot with children's clothing, or like with Bachmeier Weissach. Do you know it? It's like a hotel. It's like an app. Yeah. And so they asked us if they could have our products to sell in their shop. And I had never thought about selling my sweatshirts at a hotel shop. I don't know why. I just was so focused on like the retail stores. And so I think like a day later, I shipped them like a bunch of products and we still sell there and they sell us really, really well. We're actually their like #1 selling product of everything that they have in their hotel shop.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, that was like a moment where I almost gave up. And then something really cool happened.
Okay. And how did they find you? Like, was it like, how did they get your number?
A friend of mine actually works there. And on my Instagram, I had like reposted it was like a giveaway of another hotel. And I had like posted it to win like 2 nights there or something. And he saw that and he thought it was my business account and not my personal account. And then he was like, well, if they're selling at this hotel, they can also like sell at our hotel. And then he just like, he just called me. So yeah.
That's beautiful. That's really cool. No, you can't make that up.
No, it's just coincidence.
Yeah.
I always say most of the time the best things happen through coincidence. It would have been really hard to plan that.
No, that's really cool. Do you also have some mentors or like coaches to support you in these moments? Or maybe that serial entrepreneur guy you can call?
Yeah, I mean, him I can definitely call at any time. But I think just like my family and my friends and my boyfriend, they're all like super supportive. I try to like integrate them into what I'm doing. For example, like my friends, I use all their kids. I don't have kids, so I use all their kids for photo shoots. And that's like a cool way to, find like a connection to them. And I think when you're good friends with someone for a long period of time and they all of a sudden have kids, and you don't, the friendship changes. And that's kind of a cool way that I've been able to use my brand to kind of like bridge that, and even though I don't have children myself, I can involve that in that, process.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say like the friends I have around me. And then just through like having my own business, I've met a lot of like cool entrepreneurs who, I'm in touch with, and we meet up for coffee, which is also really nice that I've been able to build that network. My family has been really supportive. My boyfriend works in a totally different industry, but he's also in sales, which is like my total weak point. So he's like helped me so much. And given me like a lot of points. And like even yesterday I was like talking to him about being on Founder Real Talk today, and he was like giving me like, oh yeah, you could try this or you should do this.
That's cool. So would you say like, because I know some founders, they say, well, they had to cut down or they lost friendships or their relationship was like torn apart because all of a sudden, I don't know, there was some friction happening. So would you say like that was not the case for you? It was rather supportive? Or
yeah, I mean, I realize sometimes that at the end of the day, I don't have as much energy anymore, and I'm maybe not as good as reaching out as I, was when, I didn't have all this on my plate. But my social circle has always been really important to me. And so it's like when I get in touch and when I see them, it's still the same and it still feels like home. So I don't really think I've lost, maybe I see them a little bit less, or, we talk on the phone a little bit less, but I don't feel estranged from them. Like, I feel like they're still there.
Yeah, that's cool. So you didn't have to sacrifice like a friendship for the baby, the business.
No, maybe a little bit of time that maybe I haven't during that time. Well, no, I can't even say that I haven't made as many new friends because I've just made more like friends and acquaintances that are in the same business as I am. So I've met a lot of people through that. But yeah, no, I don't really feel like, I guess I'm.
Yeah, no, you are. No, that's really cool. Another question I had was the topic of shame, because it's often quite like you're jumping to something you've never done, and an entrepreneur actually does it occasionally, like every other day.
Yeah.
Did you have some moments where you felt like ashamed of, like, I don't know, something you made or like a step you took and like you weren't like really confident about it, but maybe it turned out to be the right one, or maybe not, but it taught you quite a big lesson? Was there like some kind of experiences around shame? And I would say mostly shame is attached to like the uncertainty or like out of comfort zone, where you have to kind of like force it.
I had that a lot in the beginning. It was like, I think I had a lot of like imposter syndrome too. Like, why am I good enough to build this brand? Or someone else's sweatshirts are just as good as mine, or why? So yeah, I think I felt a lot of shame around that in the beginning because I just, I always worked for a brand that was really well known. So when I said, oh, I work for this brand, people would be like, oh, wow, and now it was like, oh, we don't know your brand. Like, we don't want your product. Yeah. So I think I did feel a lot of shame because I also questioned myself. And I think designers do this a lot, but we're just like, is this design good enough? Are people gonna, when you're a designer, it's like you're really creating something and you're bringing something to life. It's not like when you're maybe working in a job where
you just execute what you told.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Thank you. Where you're like executing something. So, and I think I've always felt that shame, like even before that, when I would be in a design meeting and I'll be like, oh, I really like this. And, and then somebody like tears your design down. And you're just like, okay, because it's just it's an opinion. It's not a fact. But yeah, that's always been like a little bit of difficult for me. And now I wasn't going and presenting my design from this renowned company, but I was presenting a design that was just coming from myself.
Yeah. And did you get rejection on that, or like kind of negative feedback that people said, oh no, I don't know what they say. Maybe even just a look.
Honestly, not on the design. I mean, on like little things like it's more like little details. I'm like, oh, like this is a little bit off on the fit, or we didn't like this color so much or something, the sweatshirts shrink a little bit when you wash them. Okay, but it's 100% organic cotton. That's what it does when, but yeah, no, not really on the design. A lot of it, actually, sorry, I felt a lot of shame in the beginning about the price. Yeah. That was really hard for me to say that a sweatshirt costs 75 euros because a lot of people were like, this is way too expensive. You're not going to sell this. Why is this so expensive? So yeah, it was, and until, I can't believe I just remembered this right now, but maybe I like blocked it out of my brain, but until I could get to the point where people said, oh, what is the price? And I would just be like, yeah, it's 75 euros. That took me probably about a year to get there.
Wow. Yeah. Because it was kind of like, did you compare it to like another brand you had in mind? You kind of like admired, or like why?
Or why I felt that shame, or
yeah, about like that the price was so high. I mean, there's other designer brands that like hundreds.
Because of reactions, because people were just like, what? You're selling that for this price, And I think I felt like a lot of like I wasn't good enough to be asking for that price, even though logically I know there's other brands that are selling their sweatshirt for twice or 3 times as much. But I definitely felt, and I always felt like I had to justify it. So I felt a lot of shame around that. Now I've sold so many sweatshirts that at that price that for me, it's just normal. But in the beginning, I struggled with that a lot.
So you built the confidence because, like people buy it.
Yeah, because I was in-person events and people bought the sweatshirts and they didn't say anything about the price, and I think that's like one really good lesson I've had as a founder is depending on your environment, your value is different. It's like the water bottle, that costs 50 cents at the supermarket and €5 at the airport. People still pay €5 for it at the airport. So I always think about that theory when I think about my sweatshirts. When people go to Primark, they're not going to spend €75 on a sweatshirt, because that's just not the mindset or the mentality. But when people go into a gift shop at the Bachmeier Weissach or go into the Ludwig Beck at Marienplatz, they're expecting to pay €75 for a sweatshirt. So then,
there are different people basically going there as well. The pricing is quite a tough one, because especially when you've been employed before and you basically could hide under a certain brand and like your value was defined and your salary was defined and like what you're worth, and all of a sudden you create something and like there's no reference, right? But we never really thought about, okay, how to get out there and say, okay, this is not what it's worth.
For sure.
That
was I never had to negotiate as a designer. I wasn't negotiating prices. I just had to make a functional, nice. We had a sourcing team, so they took care of the pricing.
And would you say, because you grew up in the States, also culture-wise, there's quite a big difference of, how, I don't know, how to approach things, like from the American kind of culture is like, okay, I'm just gonna try it, just like fake it until you make it. And in Germany, it's more like, being careful, checking the regulations.
Yes, checking the regulations. And I think there's like more of a stigma here around like making mistakes. And in the US, it's just like, I feel like people embrace failure. And here it's not embraced so much. And at some point, I don't remember where I read this or learned this, but I learned to see failure, like the fail, FAEL, as first attempt in learning. That really, really helped me to embrace making mistakes and getting rejected, and that I was just learning. And then I read that Thomas Edison, I think he failed 10,000 times when he was trying to invent the light bulb that we know today. Said, I'm going to give myself 10,000 fails, and then
I always say it's either the business learning or you're learning, or in this case both. But there's quite the failing culture it's quite stigmatized in the German-speaking environment. Don't make a mistake, because it's more like like the rejection thing and like the imposter.
And I think it's also risk. I think people here are a little bit more worried about taking risks. I think the culture in the US is just more. It's just like, go for it. Go for it and just do it.
And how would you define the success for yourself or for your business? Like that you say, okay, this is my definition of success. I mean, like everyone is defining it in a different way, but I'm curious how you would see that.
That's a really good. I would say when I can like comfortably live off of my brand along with my co-founder, and when I'm in the position that I can say no to things that I don't want to do. I think that would be my definition of success.
Beautiful, because what I experience often in Germany in particular is like every time you meet another founder, like, so how is it going with your business? And it's always about the revenue. Like, so because the success is often defined with like the revenue, but no one really asks you, okay, like, like, are you on track? Are you actually always wanted to do? And can you say no? Can you follow up on your purpose?
For sure. And I think that, when I say live comfortably, I just mean like that I, don't have to be, oh God, I can't pay my rent, but because everyone has a certain, feeling of security that they want for themselves from their job. I think it's, long as I'm having fun growing the business and it's, not going over my head. I think I'm working for another founder right now, and I'm designing some handbags for her because I, still do freelance on the side. And she's like grown her business to be 7 figures. And she was telling me she had the most fun when the business was making between I'm trying to think what she said, between like 30 and 50K a month. And everything after that, it just, it just gets really stressful. Then you have to hire a lot of people. And little startup, little problems, big startup, big problems. So yeah, for her, that sweet spot was between 30 and 50K a month.
Yeah, I can see. Yeah. Yeah. Because it's like the baby you take care for, and all of a sudden, like you have a tribe.
Yeah, exactly. 100%.
Okay, perfect. Just looking at the time, maybe one more question. What would you say was like a big lesson you've learned and you would like other founders to know, or you would like to share, or that people talk more about it in the startup world?
That's a really good question. I have to think a little bit about that one.
I think with 3 questions at once, sorry.
I think I wish people talked more about their failures and talked about the beginnings. I listen a lot to a podcast called I Built This with Guy Raz, and you just realize that every founder in the beginning is in the same situation as you, and people always think like, oh, founder, they know what they're doing. And the truth is we don't really know what we're doing. And I think I wish sometimes that people would like take off that mask and just be like, okay, this isn't going well. I'm working on this. And I feel like a lot of times people think they need to like put on like a mask or like a facade and, oh, I'm so successful and this, and I always just try to be really honest because I feel like, we're all in the same boat and we probably all have the same, issues and problems. So, why not just talk about that? And I think that that's totally normal. And any founder that will tell you, oh, it's just smooth sailing, everything's been really great. Yeah, they're probably hiding something.
One last thing, is there anything the community or the listeners can do for you in your startup? I don't know, where can we buy it? Like, so it's like the webpage I saw, and like you mentioned.
Yeah, I was just going to say, if you want to do something for me and if you want to support a really good cause, we have some, I don't know if you saw it, but we have some information on our website too for Grund für Gutes and the MoMA's Care Center. Yeah, you can go on our website, chio-label.com, or in the Munich area, you can get us at the Bachmeier Weissach, Ludwig Beck, small specialty shops.
Okay. And that's for adults and also for kids, you can get the...
Yeah. We have right now a much bigger selection for kids. And actually the sweatshirt I'm wearing, this is just a sample, but we're thinking about putting it into the collection for next season, especially for October, because we've gotten like a really, really good feedback.
Yeah. Okay, so this is not only a spoiler.
Yeah, it's just a spoiler. Sorry, guys.
Okay, I can create a wait list. Okay, no, amazing. Thank you so much. It was really cool to talk to you.
Thank you. I really appreciate you having me on here.
Thanks for listening. Hit subscribe so you don't miss the next episode.